A bailiff cut a 55-year-old black veteran's hair against her will. 3 months later, he walked into court and saw her sitting on the judge's bench. Denise Maynard knew how to hold herself. After 22 years in the Air Force, you don't walk into a room without reading it first. You don't raise your voice unless it's necessary. And you sure as hell don't let people push you around. It was just after 8:30 a.m. when she parked her navy blue sedan in the public garage across from the Jackson County Courthouse in Medford, Oregon. She glanced at the time, grabbed her juror summons from the passenger seat, and adjusted the soft coil of her natural hair in the rearview mirror. Her curls, tightly defined and elegant, framed her face like a crown. She'd worn her sharp grey slacks, a neatly tucked blouse, and her favorite flat shoes, the ones that didn't pinch. She had no idea that this would be the last morning she'd feel in control for weeks. Denise had reported for jury duty plenty of times in the past, once in Colorado Springs, another in Tacoma. But this time felt different. There was something about the way people avoided eye contact as she walked through the front doors. No chatter, just the dull shuffle of feet, the stiff presence of authority. At the security checkpoint, she handed over her ID and bag, stepping through the metal detector like everyone else. No alarms, no issues. The younger guard nodded and waved her on. But then came the voice. "Ma'am, one moment." It was sharp, impatient. A voice used to being obeyed. Denise turned to see a man in a worn brown uniform with silver pins that had lost their shine. His name tag read, R. Klein. His skin was pale, his jaw clenched like he had something sour stuck between his teeth. He gave off the air of someone who'd never served but liked to pretend he had. "Yes?" Denise replied, polite but firm. "Your hair," he said, pointing with the edge of his clipboard. "That style might not comply with court decorum. It's a bit much." Denise blinked. "Excuse me." Klein didn't look her in the eye. "Courtrooms have standards. We can't have distractions, especially not with jurors. I'll need you to see our intake officer for a secondary appearance check. Courtroom 3B, just down that hall." She'd been through military inspections, intelligence briefings, and customs screenings in countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. But this was new. She stared at him, trying to decide if it was worth the confrontation now, in front of other jurors. But then she remembered what her old commanding officer used to say. "Pick your battle. Just make sure it's one you finish." So she nodded once, not in agreement but acknowledgement, and headed down the hallway. When she reached 3B, she found it empty. No intake officer, no clerk, just a row of wooden benches and a water cooler that hadn't been refilled in days. Denise waited. 5 minutes. Then 10. Then the door opened behind her. Roger Klein stepped in, alone. "There's been some confusion," he said casually, flipping through a folder. "Apparently someone flagged your appearance as a potential issue, and the presiding judge doesn't want disruptions during voir dire." Disruptions? Denise felt the word bounce around in her chest like a pinball. "With all due respect," she began slowly, "there is nothing inappropriate about how I look. This is my natural hair. I'm dressed professionally. I met every single requirement on that summons." Roger looked up. "The court determines what's appropriate. Not you." She didn't move. "Am I being detained?" "No," he replied, shrugging. "But non-compliance could be viewed as disruptive conduct. I'd hate to mark that down." Denise narrowed her eyes. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of yelling. "Not here. Not yet. I'll wait until an actual judge tells me that," she said. Klein gave a tight smile and left the room, slamming the door behind him harder than he needed to. But something told Denise that wasn't the last she'd see of him. Denise returned to the juror assembly room with a calm face, but a mind racing. She took a seat near the back, away from the chatter. Most of the others were either scrolling on their phones or awkwardly thumbing through the outdated magazines laid out on the table. A few glanced in her direction, then quickly looked away. She knew that kind of look. Not pity. Not quite. More like discomfort. The kind people wear when they've witnessed something ugly, but pretend they haven't. 15 minutes later, the bailiff called names for courtroom assignments. Denise was placed in courtroom 1C. She got up, walked with the group, and entered the room where jury selection would begin. The judge hadn't arrived yet, but the attorneys were already inside, one defense, one prosecutor, quietly organizing notes. Roger Klein stood by the bench. He didn't acknowledge her at first. He scanned the group like a drill sergeant looking for someone to break. Then he saw her. His lip twitched. Barely noticeable. But Denise caught it. As the rest of the group filed into the juror box, Roger tapped his baton lightly against the side of the podium. "Before we begin," he announced, "some of you were flagged for further appearance review. This is standard procedure." Denise tilted her head. There it was again. The word appearance. Code for something else. "Juror number 12, he said, locking eyes with her. She stood. "Please step outside with me." The room went silent. One of the defense attorneys looked up sharply. Denise caught it, that brief moment of doubt flickering across his face. But no one spoke up. She followed Roger into the hallway. Once the door closed, she took a breath. "If you're going to keep singling me out, I suggest you put it in writing." He didn't even flinch. "You know, I've seen a lot of people come in here thinking they can push limits. Hairdos, outfits, attitudes. You're not special." Denise didn't react. "I didn't say I was. You people always think you're owed something." There it was. No more code. No more pretense. Just raw, sour bigotry. "My hair doesn't interfere with my ability to serve," she said slowly. "What you're doing right now, that's personal." Roger stepped closer. "This is a courtroom, not a beauty salon. That hair is a distraction. And I'm tired of repeating myself." Denise looked him in the eye. "I'm not here for your comfort. I'm here because I was summoned, same as everyone else." For a moment, he said nothing, just stared. Then, almost like flipping a switch, he backed off. "Fine," he said, voice clipped. "Go back inside." She walked past him without another word. But when she sat down, she could feel the tension return like static in the room. The way the clerk avoided her eyes, the way Roger leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her like he was daring her to breathe wrong. The judge arrived shortly after, a tall woman with a quiet, commanding presence, and began the voir dire process. Denise listened carefully to every question, gave thoughtful answers, and maintained her posture. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted fairness, dignity. By the end of the day, she was released from service, not selected, no explanation. As she stepped out of the courthouse, she saw Roger through the glass doors, talking to another bailiff, laughing, loudly. She kept walking. Her fingers curled into her palms as she crossed the parking lot. But her instinct told her this wasn't over. It was just the beginning. 2 days later, a letter showed up at Denise's door. Official courthouse letterhead. Return address, Jackson County Judicial Administration. Inside, a folded page with carefully chosen words. "Due to concerns regarding appearance compliance and courtroom decorum during your recent jury service, we request your presence for a brief follow-up." No signature, just a time, a room number, and the line, "Failure to appear may result in further action." Denise held the paper tight in her hand, lips pressed. There was no mention of legal standing, no legal citation, just vague language and a veiled threat. She didn't like the smell of it, but she'd worn a uniform long enough to know how certain systems try to bury you under politeness before they push harder. She could have ignored it, but something told her to face it directly. Get the facts. Make a record. If this man, Roger, was going to harass her, she wanted it on paper. So she went. This time, she wore the same outfit. Same hair. Nothing had changed. Not her dignity, not her pride. Courtroom 2A. Empty. Again. The bench was roped off, and the gallery lights were dimmed. Only the judge's entrance door stood open in the back. Denise waited 5 minutes. No one showed. Then Roger Klein stepped in. Alone again. "You came," he said, not even trying to act surprised. "Most people wouldn't have." "I'm not most people," she said. He motioned to the side door. "We'll do this privately." "I'd prefer a public space," she replied calmly. "This is a matter of internal policy," he insisted, voice firmer now. "You were flagged by a supervising official. It's standard." She didn't believe a word, but she walked through the door anyway. She wanted this recorded, in her memory, in her words, in any way she could retell it. The room behind the bench was small, more of a storage area converted into a prep space. Folding chairs, a cracked mirror, a closet with outdated court uniforms. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Roger closed the door. She didn't sit. "I need you to remove the hairpiece," he said flatly. "There is no hairpiece." He stepped forward, holding a clipboard in one hand, the other hidden behind his back. "Court standards require visibility of the ears and neckline. That hair prevents proper identification in courtroom proceedings. This isn't personal, just protocol." "Then show me the protocol," Denise said. "In writing." "I'm following orders." "From who?" "Supervising bailiff." "Name?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer and, before she could fully process it, reached forward and grabbed a lock of her hair. Her body reacted instantly. Her hands came up to block him. Her voice stayed even. "Don't touch me." Roger pulled back, only to lift a pair of dull metal scissors from behind his clipboard. "I'm not going to ask again." Denise's chest tightened, but she didn't move. She knew better than to give him what he wanted. "You're violating my rights," she said. He didn't care. With one brutal snip, he cut a thick coil near her left ear. It fell onto the cold linoleum floor like something sacred being discarded. She didn't flinch. Another cut, then another. Her eyes didn't leave his. When he was done, he tossed the scissors onto the chair beside her, wiped his hand on his pants and muttered, "That's better." Denise remained still. "You're done here," he said. "You're excused from all further jury duty. Permanently." She turned and walked out. No tears. No reaction. But outside, in the parking lot, sitting behind the wheel of her car, she allowed herself one long breath, not to cry, but to commit the moment to memory, because this man had no idea who she really was, and what she was about to do next. Denise didn't sleep much that night, not because of fear, but because of focus. Every part of her military training taught her that when you're violated, you don't respond emotionally. You respond effectively, with structure, with clarity, with evidence. By sunrise, she had already typed out a full statement. Names, times, room numbers, dialogue, everything she could recall with precision. She didn't dress in a rush. She wore a dark navy blazer, pressed slacks, and a soft scarf to cover the uneven patches Roger had hacked through. Her hair still sat uneven, parts of it jagged near the scalp, but she didn't hide from the mirror. She faced it. The office she went to was downtown, Fletcher & Rhodes, a law firm known in Southern Oregon for their civil rights work. She'd called ahead, explained briefly what happened. They gave her a same-day appointment. That told her something. The receptionist was quiet and professional. She passed Denise a clipboard with a few intake questions, then guided her to a corner office on the 3rd floor. Her attorney walked in 3 minutes later. Early 40s, brown leather folder under one arm. His name was Calvin Strode. "Ms. Maynard," he said, offering a firm handshake. "I read the summary you emailed. I just need to ask, do you want to go public with this or just hold them accountable quietly?" Denise didn't hesitate. "I want a record, for every person who's ever been humiliated and walked away." "I'm not walking away," Calvin gave a quick nod. "Good. Then we start here. First, we file an official complaint with the Courthouse Ethics Office. Then we go to the State Judicial Commission. I'll submit a cease and desist letter to prevent them from destroying any video footage of courtroom 2A or 3B, if it exists." "There were no cameras in that back room," she said. He paused. "Then we lean on testimony. You, the letter they sent, the language they used. If they respond poorly, that works in our favor." She handed him the folded courthouse letter. He scanned it, frowned. "This isn't protocol. This looks like someone trying to pressure you under color of authority without a judge's actual backing." Denise nodded once. "That's what I thought." They talked for nearly 2 hours. He asked questions. She answered everyone with military precision. Dates, observations. She even remembered the scuff on Roger's badge and the clipboard he used to hide the scissors. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Calvin asked one more time. "They're going to try and bury it. Deny. Delay. paint you as dramatic. I've been called worse by people who did less," she said. That afternoon, Calvin submitted the official ethics complaint. He CC'd every name he could find on the county's oversight board. He requested a formal inquiry into Bailiff Roger Klein's conduct, including his language, use of force, and apparent impersonation of authority. By the end of the week, Denise received an acknowledgement from the Oversight Committee. "We are reviewing the matter and will notify you should further information be required." Polite, neutral, dismissive. She printed it anyway. Evidence. Back at home, Denise pulled an old notebook from a drawer, the one she kept during her last 3 years of military service, filled with goals she never had time to chase. One page was titled, "Things to do when I finally have time." Halfway down the list, "Study for the bar exam. Apply to the Oregon Judicial Institute." She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up a pen and checked both boxes. Not because she was ready, but because it was time. Because Roger had taken her hair, but he hadn't taken her will. Not even close. It didn't happen overnight. These things never do. But once the complaint landed on the right desk, the wheels began to move, slow, creaky, and reluctant at first. Then steady. A courthouse investigator reached out to Calvin within 3 weeks. Not for a full interview, just to confirm Denise's claim had been received and logged. Bureaucratic talk. But Denise wasn't waiting on anyone to validate her. While the county tossed paperwork back and forth, she studied. She split her days between work, law prep books, and late-night research on judicial misconduct cases. Oregon's state code had loopholes, but it also had sharp teeth. She knew how to find them now. Calvin sent her resources, mock exams, flashcards. What started as a retaliation strategy became something deeper. A calling. Meanwhile, inside the Jackson County Courthouse, people started to whisper. Roger Klein had worked there for 9 years. Long enough to become background noise, the kind of man who barely got questioned because he wore a badge and didn't rock the boat. But now, attorneys who had let his comments slide started to rethink them. One clerk remembered Roger telling a woman she was too flashy for civic duty because of her lipstick. Another recalled him loudly suggesting that certain types of people weren't respectful enough for the courtroom. None of them had reported him. Until now. Suddenly files started getting pulled. Camera footage was reviewed. Staff were quietly asked to sit for interviews. And when a supervisor caught Roger muttering something inappropriate in the hallway, unaware he was being shadowed that day, it was the first tangible strike. He was called into a meeting with 2 senior administrators. He came out red-faced, lips tight, still on duty, still smug. But he knew something had shifted. And he was right. Behind the scenes, the Oversight Board had opened a Class B misconduct inquiry. Rare, but not unprecedented. It meant the complaint had merit. It also meant the courthouse would need to make a public record of their findings, no matter how much they wanted it to disappear. Roger was placed on an unofficial watch list, no formal suspension, just more eyes on him. That was often how institutions protected their own, by pretending to investigate while keeping the problem employed. But Denise wasn't counting on them. She kept going. 2 months after her complaint, she passed her first mock bar exam. She didn't celebrate. She just marked the score in her notebook and flipped to the next practice section. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, just like the first one. No threats this time. Instead, an invitation. Jackson County Circuit Court is seeking interim appointments for judicial assistants and temporary hearing officers due to backlog. Applicants with legal experience, prior military service, or bar certification are encouraged to apply. She read it twice. Then once more. Calvin called later that week. They're opening a temporary judge slot. Low-level cases at first. Mediation, small claims, that sort of thing. It's political theater. They need a show of reform. You qualify. I haven't passed the bar yet, she said. Doesn't matter. Your service record, your coursework, your complaint, it's all on file. The commission is trying to clean house without drawing heat. You're not their first choice. But you're the best one they have. She didn't say yes right away. She sat with it. Thought about what it would mean to walk back into that building, not as a victim, not as a juror, but as the one behind the bench. She didn't crave revenge. She wasn't interested in power. But she believed in something bigger than both. Because if the system wanted to keep hiding people like Roger, someone had to walk through the front door and make them look up. The morning she returned to the courthouse, the weather was unusually dry for February. Cold, but clear. Denise parked in the same garage. Same level, same row. The building hadn't changed. The stone facade, the flag out front, the faint echo of heels on tile as people walked in. But everything about her had changed. She wore a black judicial robe, pressed and tailored. Her hair had grown back just enough to shape, lined evenly and tight around the edges. No scarf this time, no silence, just purpose. When she stepped through security, the guard on duty straightened up a little more than usual. He recognized her, but didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Her assignment wasn't ceremonial. It was real. She'd been confirmed as interim hearing officer, authority limited, but still enough to preside over small cases, make legal rulings and hold court. Room 1C, the same courtroom where Roger first tried to shame her. She arrived early. The clerk assigned to her, a younger woman named Tamara Hines, met her at the door, eyes wide but smiling. "I read about your case," she said softly. "It took guts." Denise smiled back. "It took patience. And a good attorney." Tamara let out a short laugh. "Well, welcome back. Courtroom's yours." She walked in, steady, measured steps. The space looked smaller now, less intimidating. The walls were the same off-white. The judge's bench looked exactly like it had the first time she stood across from it. Only now, it was hers. She set down her notes, adjusted the mic, and reviewed the docket for the day. 3 mediation hearings, 1 property dispute, and a family case scheduled for later. At 9:01 a.m., the side door opened. Roger Klein stepped in, just like he always did. Clipboard in hand, keys jingling on his belt. He didn't look up right away, not until he'd crossed halfway to the bench. Then he saw her. Stopped cold. For a second he didn't move, didn't blink. The clipboard slipped slightly in his hand. "Good morning," Denise said, her voice even. "You're on time." He opened his mouth, closed it. His posture, once stiff with authority, seemed to crumple slightly at the edges. Tamara watched from her station, saying nothing. Roger tried to regain control. "Judge Maynard, I wasn't aware I was confirmed last week," she said, flipping a page. "Temporary hearing officer. I'm presiding here for the next 6 weeks." He didn't respond. She looked up. "You're not required in this courtroom today. Courtroom 4B needs an extra body. You'll report there instead." That was it. No threats, no accusations, just the right words, spoken plainly. Roger stood for another second, then nodded once, without a word, and turned around. He didn't slam the door this time. When it shut behind him, the room felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, clearer. Denise exhaled through her nose and turned her attention to the first case file. The day went smoothly. Each hearing was handled with patience, fairness, and the kind of steadiness that comes from a life built on structure. No theatrics, just law. But what mattered most wasn't what happened in the courtroom. It was who saw her there. By noon, word had traveled down the halls. Bailiffs, clerks, even attorneys walked a little slower past room 1C. Some glanced through the small window on the door. Some didn't. She didn't care. This wasn't a performance. It wasn't about shock or retaliation. It was about being seen where someone once tried to erase her. Roger didn't come back to room 1C. Not the next day. Not the next week. He didn't have to be told twice. Word spread fast in that building, and no one wanted to be the one caught misstepping in her courtroom. But Denise wasn't chasing ghosts. She had cases to manage, decisions to write, and a backlog of mediations that had nothing to do with her past. Still, justice has a way of circling back on its own. 3 weeks into her assignment, Denise received a quiet knock at her office door. It was Tamara, holding a sealed envelope. "This came from admin," she said, keeping her voice low. Denise opened it. Inside, a printed memo from the courthouse's disciplinary panel. Subject: Final ruling. Bailiff Roger Klein. She read it twice. Suspension without pay, pending a full ethics review. Multiple complaints corroborated. Inappropriate conduct confirmed. One more infraction, and termination would follow. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She placed the paper in a folder and filed it away, not out of indifference, but out of purpose. The system wasn't built to satisfy the people it hurt. But this was something. Not enough, but something. That afternoon, she stepped into her courtroom as usual. First case, a landlord-tenant dispute over a heating bill. Both parties arrived defensive, already mid-argument. Denise held up one hand. Let's slow down. This room doesn't belong to either of you. It belongs to the process. If you want noise, take it outside. If you want resolution, stay seated. The room quieted. She guided them through it like a pilot in bad weather, calm, focused, firm when needed. Neither party walked out thrilled, but both walked out heard. That mattered. Later that day, while packing up her notes, Tamara lingered. "Did you hear?" she asked. "They're starting interviews for permanent positions next quarter. They want diversity on the bench." Denise looked up from her folder. "Diversity's not a pitch. It's a necessity," Tamara grinned. "I know, but you should apply. I mean it. People talk about you in the halls, not the scandal. The way you run this courtroom. Like it matters." Denise paused. "It does matter." Then she reached for her pen and jotted something in the corner of her calendar. Deadline: permanent appointment application, April 12th. Not because she needed the job, but because people like her weren't supposed to last this long in a place like that. And maybe, just maybe, seeing her up there would change the next person's outcome. A week later, on a slow Friday morning, a young intern named Marisol poked her head in. "Can I ask you something?" Denise looked up. "Sure." I heard what happened, with that bailiff. And then I saw you up there, not reacting, not making it about him." Denise folded her hands. "What did you want to ask?" "How'd you not explode?" "I think I would have." Denise gave a slow, deliberate smile. "Exploding makes a mess. But pressure, applied the right way at the right time, it changes shape. It moves the whole structure." Marisol nodded, eyes wide. "I think I needed to hear that." Before she left, Denise added, "Don't let anyone shrink you to make themselves feel tall. Not in court. Not in life." She'd said those words before. In the military. To herself in front of the mirror. But this time, someone heard them. Because the real reckoning isn't when the system admits it was wrong. It's when you hold your ground so well, it can't pretend you don't exist. 2 months after she first took the bench, Denise sat alone in her chambers on a rainy Tuesday, a mug of black coffee cooling beside her case files. The courthouse was quiet, slower than usual. Most of her hearings had been wrapped up for the day. She leaned back, stretching her shoulders. Across the room sat the very folder that started it all. Her handwritten complaint, Calvin's notes, the original summons, even a small bag containing the strands of hair Roger had cut, now tied neatly with a red string. She never intended to keep it. But something had stopped her from throwing it away. Maybe it was proof. Maybe it was a reminder. Maybe it was something else. Later that day, she was invited to speak at a community forum downtown, a modest event hosted by a local veterans group focused on civic engagement. She'd initially declined, but Tamara had insisted, "They're not asking for a judge. They're asking for you," so she went. The room wasn't packed. A few dozen people, mostly retired servicemen, a few teachers, some young students, gathered around a modest podium in a church hall off Crater Lake Avenue. Denise didn't bring a speech. She brought a story. She told them about the letter, the hallway, the scissors. She didn't cry. Her voice didn't shake. But it did slow. "You don't walk through fire expecting applause," she said. "You walk through it because you're tired of pretending the smoke isn't choking you." A woman in the second row blinked back tears. An older man leaned forward, nodding once. "I wasn't brave because I'm a veteran," Denise said. "I was brave because I knew no one else was going to stand up for me in that room. And I wanted to be the reason the next woman doesn't have to go through what I did." A pause. Then she added, "Justice isn't always loud. It's not a gavel slamming or a headline in a paper. Sometimes it's just walking back into a room they tried to shame you out of, and sitting at the table like you never left." When the applause came, it wasn't explosive. It was steady, real, the kind people give when they've heard something that sticks. Afterward, a young black girl, maybe 15, approached her quietly. "Miss Maynard," she said, voice small but steady, "I wear my hair like yours. And sometimes at school, they say stuff. Not directly, but it hurts." Denise knelt slightly, met her eye. "You keep wearing it," she said. "You walk in knowing it's not you that needs fixing. It's their view that needs correcting." The girl nodded. Denise touched her shoulder lightly. "You remember your name, before they try to rename you with shame." That moment wasn't captured on video. No camera crews, no press. But that was the real verdict. Later, back at her desk, Denise jotted one final note in her old notebook. "You win when you remain whole." Her assignment would end soon. The county would rotate her out, maybe offer a permanent position, maybe not. But she'd done what she came to do. She'd told the truth, held her ground, and reminded everyone that silence doesn't mean peace. It just means no one's speaking up yet. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe. Not for me, for the next voice that needs to be heard. Because sometimes justice sounds like your own name spoken without shame.